You've heard of sacred intimacy and sexual energy work. You've heard of manifestation through pleasure, orgasmic intention, and life force. But what if I told you that behind all of it, beneath the surface of every sacred union, every tantric breath, every climax, is a hidden current? It was buried in symbolism across ancient Egypt, Tantra, and Daoist alchemy, a current whispered through serpent cults, temple rites, and lovers who knew how to bend time with their breath. They didn't call it the 69th current, but they lived it. Because 69 isn't just a number. Due to platform guidelines, certain truths are veiled in metaphor and symbol. I invite you to listen with your inner ear, to read between the lines, and feel into the deeper meaning behind what we call 69. A gateway between opposites, the root and the crown, the earth and the stars, the lover and the divine. Some elements of this video have been refined to align with platform standards due to its original esoteric intensity. So what you're watching now is the refined version, and not the original version, which is sadly no longer available here. Please see the link to my Patreon in the description below for the uncensored, original, complete with all the teachings and hidden transmissions that cannot be shared here. In this video, my 69th long-form video, we are going to uncover exactly what this hidden current is. We will discuss how to work with this current during sacred union to transmute your life force into spiritual power and manifestation. Whether you're solo, in sacred partnership, or just starting to feel the fire rise, you're about to remember something your body has always known. Let's begin with the symbol itself, 69. You've seen it before, but probably never through the eyes of a mystic. At first glance, it's often interpreted as something sexual. But if you slow down and feel into the shape, it's so much more than that. In sacred symbolism, 6 and 9 are not random. The 6 spirals downward, its embodiment, desire, grounding into the body. It's the energy of the root, pleasure, the physical world. The 9 curves upward. It's release, completion, transcendence. It's the crown, the higher mind, the peak orgasmic experience that becomes something greater than release. Together, these two shapes form a perfect loop, a sacred current between descent and ascent, where spirit becomes flesh and flesh returns to spirit. It's a mirrored exchange, a symbol of polarity, reciprocity, and transmutation, a visual representation of the cycle that gives rise to manifestation and spiritual power. Ancient systems understood this dynamic. In Daoism, yin and yang weren't opposing forces, they were breathing partners, each feeding the other in an eternal flow. In Tantra, we see this in the sacred union of Shiva and Shakti, pure consciousness entwined with raw creative energy. And in ancient Egypt, the mirrored serpents winding around the crown or spinal column represented the dual life forces moving through the body, one lunar, one solar, converging to awaken divine intelligence. Even the Ouroboros, the serpent eating its own tail, echoes this closed-loop rhythm, the mouth and the base endlessly feeding one another. In this light, the 69th current isn't a position, it's a frequency, a pathway where the physical and energetic meet, where pleasure becomes a gateway into higher states of being. And perhaps, most importantly, it's a state you can access now without needing to wait for the climax. There's also a hidden lunar code embedded in this symbol. In both Tantric and Egyptian systems, the moon was seen as a vessel of subtle, reflective power, associated with the feminine, with the womb, and with hidden wisdom. The number 6 in many esoteric traditions is tied to Venus, beauty, sensuality, earthly love, while 9 often links to the moon, the goddess, and the final phase before spiritual rebirth. Together, 69 becomes a cosmic echo of the feminine mysteries, cyclical, rhythmic, reflective, and intensely magnetic. Two beings or energies feeding into each other's rhythm, endlessly, without force. And that's what makes 69 so esoterically potent. It teaches that true power isn't a linear explosion, it's a circular flow. The shape shows us how to build energy without breaking it. Instead of releasing outward, we recycle. Instead of separation, we unify. This is the foundation of all energy work, all sexual alchemy, the ability to hold polarity in motion without collapse. And when you understand this, you realize 69 is a living key, a symbol you can awaken in the body through intention, breath, and subtle movement. And this current, this mirrored spiral of descent and ascent, doesn't just live in symbols or stories, it lives in your body. You can feel it right now. Gently close your eyes and begin to breathe with awareness. As you inhale, imagine drawing energy up the spine, from your root to your crown, like the upward curve of the 9. As you exhale, let it spiral down the front of your body, returning to the base, the grounding pulse of the 6. With each breath, a loop begins to form, a sacred circuit of pleasure and presence. If you're alone, feel this loop moving inside you, subtle, electric, alive. If you're with a partner, let your breath move together, as if your bodies were mirroring one another in that sacred shape. You don't need to move. You don't even need to touch. This is the beginning of something deeper, an activation of the 69th current, where the inhale becomes invocation and the exhale becomes offering, where sensation becomes energy and energy becomes awareness. In the ancient temples of Egypt, sexuality was never seen as shameful or purely physical. It was divine. The priestesses of Isis weren't just figures of worship, they were initiators. They understood that this energy could open the gates to resurrection, spiritual power, and even cosmic knowledge. And Isis herself, the great goddess of magic and life, held the keys to this sacred current. She was both mother and lover, both nurturer and awakener, and her myth of reassembling Osiris, breathing life into him, and conceiving Horus through their ecstatic union wasn't just a story. It was a spiritual technology, a blueprint for using this energy to resurrect power from fragmentation. In the context of the 69th current, this myth becomes even more vivid. Isis embodies the upward spiral, the 9, the divine feminine current that rises with purpose, with intention. Osiris, dismembered and broken, symbolizes the 6, the descent into matter, the fragmentation of the soul in the physical realm. Their union, in tantric terms, isn't just sexual, it's alchemical. She reclaims his body part by part, and in doing so, reclaims the divine masculine principle from disintegration. Their final union represents a complete energetic circuit, the sacred loop of 6 and 9, body and spirit, death and rebirth, lover and beloved. The 69th current, in this view, is sacred and restorative. The Egyptian understanding of energy currents was deeply linked to the duality of lunar and solar forces. Solar energy, masculine, radiant, direct, was linked to Ra, to action, to outward movement. Lunar energy, feminine, receptive, magnetic, was linked to Isis, to intuition, and to the mysteries of the body. Where solar energy seeks to penetrate, lunar energy seeks to pull in, to contain, to gestate. And the 69th current is the bridge where these two flows meet in perfect reciprocity. The serpent was one of the most powerful symbols of this rising energy. In Egyptian iconography, serpents were not demonic, they were guardians of power. Wadjet, the cobra goddess, sat on the forehead of pharaohs, symbolizing the awakened eye, the rise of inner fire. This is the same serpent energy that Tantra calls Kundalini. And when Isis used her breath and magic to revive Osiris, she was channeling this exact force, the coiled life current that, when activated with intention, doesn't just bring pleasure, it brings transformation. The 69th current is serpent-like. It moves in mirrored spirals, up and down, masculine and feminine, always entwined. This is not metaphor. You can feel it in your own body. When sexual energy rises consciously, when it's not rushed or discharged aimlessly, it begins to take on this serpentine rhythm. The breath slows. The body becomes liquid. There's a sensation of something ancient waking up inside you, a tingling, a pulse, a whisper of power at the base of the spine. And when you add intention to it, when you use this energy not just for release but for reclamation, you enter the Isis current. You awaken what's been scattered. You gather the pieces of your soul, just as she gathered the pieces of Osiris. This is why sexual energy can be used to reclaim fragmented power, especially after trauma, heartbreak, or spiritual fatigue. Isis shows us that peak energy isn't just for union with another, it can be a ritual of resurrection with yourself. Through breath, imagery, sound, and sensual touch, you begin to remember yourself, not just mentally, but energetically. And the mirror becomes sacred in this process, because Isis didn't just resurrect Osiris, she saw him. She beheld him with devotion. Mirror gazing during sacred self-connection allows you to witness yourself as divine, not broken, not impure, but whole. The 69th current, through this lens, is the path of energetic resurrection through sexual gnosis. It is not the chase of pleasure, but the art of containing it, spiraling it, giving it meaning. And if you would like to explore the full ritual practice of the Isis current, breath, mirror, and embodiment, the complete version is on Patreon. In classical Tantra, the body is not a distraction from enlightenment. It's the very gateway to it, and sex is not sin. It is sacred ritual. Within this ancient science of union, every breath, every movement, every gaze becomes part of the path, and the act of love, when done consciously, becomes a mirror of the cosmos. That's why, in true Tantric tradition, 69 is not seen as a mere position, it is a symbol, a living yantra of energetic reciprocity between Shiva and Shakti, the divine masculine and feminine. When you look at the sacred geometry of 6 and 9, you'll see that they represent the root and throat chakras. Together, they reflect the energetic flow between grounding and expression, between earth and air, creation and communication. In Sanskrit philosophy, the throat is associated with the Vishuddha chakra, the energy center of expression, truth, and vibration. The genitals are linked to the root and sacral chakras, centers of instinct, survival, sexuality, and creation. When the root and throat energies connect in sacred union, something deeper awakens, a current between creation and expression. This is one of those reading between the lines moments. There is a divine democracy in this act, a holy equilibrium. And that's what Tantra teaches us, that in true union, giving is receiving, that the act of offering pleasure becomes the experience of receiving love. From an energetic perspective, the 69th current flows beautifully through this form. Each partner becomes both the source and the vessel. Energy doesn't just rise, it loops. Breath sinks, intention converges, and orgasmic energy can be shared, circulated throughout the body and directed. But here's where the mystery deepens, because this isn't just about energy between two people. This activates an inner current as well. Your own throat and root begin to speak to each other. You start to notice where your truth has been blocked, where desire has been silenced. And as the breath moves in rhythm, the loop dissolves these inner splits. And when the intention is aligned, the ecstatic release becomes a carrier wave. The ancient Tantrikas taught that pleasure opens a portal, but what moves through that portal is shaped by your awareness. So if you enter the act with presence and sacred intention, that peak experience becomes a seed, not just of ecstasy, but of manifestation. The 69th current is the serpent biting its own tail, desire feeding expression, pleasure feeding purpose. When activated consciously, it becomes a field of pure creative potential. And it's important to name that in many traditional texts, the union of Shiva and Shakti was never solely about heterosexual intercourse. The energies themselves exist in all beings, regardless of gender or orientation. The mouth and the root exist in every body. What matters is the conscious mirroring, the choice to become both giver and receiver, the willingness to be both seen and surrendered to. So how do you make this sacred in practice? You begin with presence. Let go of urgency. Let go of performance. Create a space where the act becomes devotional. Light a candle. Breathe together. Make eye contact. And when arousal begins to build, look inward. What are you ready to create? What intention are you sending into the subtle world? When the energy builds, hold that intention softly. Let pleasure carry it. Let it become your invocation. This is how Tantra turns the body into a temple, how sacred union becomes alchemy, and how mirrored connection, entered with reverence, reveals the divine within the flesh. While Tantra honors the sacred union of two bodies, ancient Daoist alchemy turned inward, viewing the human form as a vessel for transforming life force into vitality and awareness. One of the core practices, the microcosmic orbit, guides breath and energy in a loop, up the spine on the inhale, down the front on the exhale. This circular current becomes a living circuit, warming, awakening, and refining the body from within. And if you look closely, this orbit mirrors the geometry of 69, two polarities cycling into each other. In this way, the 69th current is not just a shared experience. It becomes an inner loop, one you can awaken solo, through breath, presence, and conscious containment of energy. This is just one facet of the 69th current, an ancient inner technology that still lives in the breath, the body, and the soul. The deeper layers of this path, those tied to manifestation, ritual timing, and sacred erotic power, are too potent to explore here, but they are waiting. You'll find them in the full uncensored version of this video on Patreon, along with the complete teachings that YouTube doesn't allow. Until then, remember, your body is not separate from spirit. You are the ritual, you are the portal, and the spiral is already within you. If this video resonated with you, check out the other videos on my channel about sacred energy, manifestation, and inner alchemy. There's a whole journey waiting for you, one that brings you deeper into your own power, your own current, your own sacred path. I'll be sharing more advanced practices soon for both men and women, solo and partnered, so if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe, and leave a comment. And if you liked this video, drop a comment and tell me what number you were. It helps more than you know. And I love seeing who's here early, feeling the current rise. You're not learning something new, you're remembering what was always yours. And every time you close the loop, you step through the gate.